All right, hopefully you're seeing my presentation beginning slide, and we will get started with the presentation. As I was saying earlier, this session is mostly going to be a checklist of what to do to help get your new board member up to speed quickly. I cannot cover everything that we're going to talk about today. There's just so much for a new trustee to know and to learn. But hopefully, this will be a very good starting point for everyone and give you a very good idea of some of the stuff that new board member is going to need very quickly. If it's the board member's first time serving on the board, they're going to need some basic information on the role of the other board members and who serves in each position. I kind of go into it as if they know nothing. All board members need to represent the library and its interest in the community. A few of the board members are going to have additional responsibilities in making sure the board runs effectively. The following activities is an extremely general idea of what each board member does and does not reflect the roles in its entirety. The board president, and in the absence of the president, the vice president, their role is to ensure that the board meetings run effectively. The secretary has several important responsibilities before each board meeting, including helping to post the board notice for the meeting, take notes during the meeting, and help prepare the minutes. The treasurer is entrusted to monitor the library's funds to make sure everything is being spent appropriately. And the library director works with the board to help provide additional information and to provide recommendations. The director provides an activity report to the board that outlines what the library has been working on or has done since the last board meeting, provides recommendations for policies, and answers questions. As everyone learns about the roles of the board, keep in mind that no one individual trustee can speak or act for the board or for the library unless specifically empowered to do so by board action, or whether it is adopted by the bylaws. When the board speaks, it's supposed to speak with one voice. If the board member disagrees with the decision, he or she still needs to stand behind the full board's decision. And that will also go for the library director. We may not always agree, but it is a single voice that we need to present. There are several essential documents that need to be put together for the trustee to help get them up to speed. The bylaws is some of the most important things. They are the established rules of the board that they use to govern themselves. All the bylaws include information on how the board officers are elected and the powers and responsibilities of each officer. When meetings are held and are conducted, what committees are appointed, how those committees are appointed, and what each committee does. It should also include how the bylaws should be able to be amended or if things need to be changed. It would also be a great idea to give the new board member at least a year of the previous board minutes. Those minutes will help give the new board member an understanding of the issues that the board has been discussing or is still discussing and the recent actions taken. It will really help to get them up to speed quickly. The board member will also need the policies that impact the patrons. And these can include, but are not limited to, the circulation policy, the internet use policy, the meeting room use policy, the hours of operation, and anything else that has been adopted for governing patron use. It is also a good idea to give the new board member the personnel policy because it sets the standards for the library employees. It'll give the board member an idea on the hiring and firing, how employees can file grievances, whether or not annual and sick leave is provided, and other services that the library offers to its employees. The business continuity plan is also a very good thing, especially nowadays, to give the new board member. This plan is going to state how the library will function in an emergency. Such emergencies may include natural disasters, snow, flooding, tornadoes, which are common in West Virginia, or statewide health emergencies like COVID-19. This policy should include information like who does the staff call for information? Does the library remain open during the emergency? And if so, what services will be available to the public? If your library has a friends group, and keep in mind, not all libraries do, please provide information on the main point of contact and information on the projects the friends group is working on for the public library. That way, the new board member understands what the friends group is working on and what its role is in helping the public library. I would also recommend giving them the link. You may not need to print this out. It is a nice couple of trees. The Trustees Essential Handbook. This handbook was designed by the West Virginia Library Commission to help each board member navigate a trustee's varied roles. It is available electronically as a PDF at the URL on the slide. And I'm going to ask Michelle to please put that in the chat also. I'm going to reference some sections of the Trustee Essential Handbook later on in the slides. So if you want to have it up and running as well, that would be fantastic. And last, it is really important that they understand some of the Robert's Rules of Order, because this is the guide to help set board meetings. It outlines how the board should make motions, how it should vote, how amendments are made. It also contains information on how to develop, how to change, and how to suspend sections of the board's bylaws. I do admit it's very long, it's very dry reading, so I would recommend a condensed version. The version that I use is the Robert's Rules of Order newly revised edition in brief. And the Library Commission sent a copy of this out to the library several years ago. So if you still have that copy, it might be a good idea to pull it out for the board member so they can kind of peruse it and get a good understanding of what Robert's Rules ask of us. So where should the new library trustee start after getting all of these essential documents? Well, if the new trustee does not know the library director, I highly recommend they schedule an appointment to meet with him or her to learn about the library. This is a perfect opportunity for the new library trustee to learn about the library's mission, its service population, including which sections of the community frequently use the library's services and those who do not, how many library employees the library has, the collection, its strengths and weaknesses, to see the library building or library buildings if you have branches, what is working within the buildings, what is going to need fixed or replaced in the next 5 years, and any other information you can give that new board member about the building. It's also a good way to help get the new trustee to understand how the library is funded, whether it's Board of Education funding, county commission funding, city funding, a combination. If the library has hotel motel tax money that comes in frequently, this is also a wonderful opportunity for a library director to talk about whether or not those funds are sufficient. What new services would the library director like to roll out in the next 5 years? How will those changes affect the budget? That way, the new board member can understand the changing role of the budget and the changing services that the library provides, whether or not that funding is sufficient, and help understand what might be needed in the next couple of years to help advocate for the library. It's also important that the board member understands the laws that are associated with forming and guiding public libraries. The West Virginia Code, also known as Chapter 10, is available in the Trustee Essential Handbook on page 89. Basically, Chapter 10 outlines how libraries are formed in West Virginia, how the Library Commission is formed and its duties. Title 173, Legislative Rule, Library Commission Administrative Rules, also fondly known as the ARs, basically takes information from Chapter 10 and says how the Library Commission is going to apply it. This is also in the Trustee Essential Handbook starting on page 100. And all board meetings held within the state has to follow West Virginia Code, Chapter 6, Article 9A, Open Governmental Proceedings. This is also known as the Sunshine Law. This section of the law may be located on page 17 of the Trustee Essential Handbook. The following items from this law is generally the biggest sticking point for some boards. This law outlines several items, including the time frame for letting the public know about upcoming meetings, basically how many days you have to give before the board meeting to post that meeting, the meeting minutes, and whether or not the board meeting can be broadcasted or recorded. It is also a good idea to contact the Library Commission to let us know that you have a new board member. That way we can add them to our trustees listserv and we can let them know about any training that the Library Commission is doing for trustees. There are 3 people who mostly work with trustees at the commission, and that would be Karen Goff, our executive secretary, myself, and Susan Bailey, our library services consultant. Susan is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to library policies and procedures, so she is a great person to contact. Not only that, Susan has a wealth of statistical data at her hands and fingertips that she can get to you guys if you need stats to help back up decisions. On the slide, I did include our phone number. We are still in and out of the office, depending on the week and the individual. So please try to call first. If we're not in the office, please send us an email. And one of the things that I would like to point out for the trustees is we require the library to complete a lot of yearly paperwork. That paperwork is for the grants and aid, any continuing education scholarships. And when we send this paperwork, please give it to your board members to review. Please make sure that they read it and understand, because once they sign, they are supposed to follow what is in that paperwork. So make sure they understand it. If they don't, have them call us. We'll be more than happy to explain the paperwork to them and why we require such things. I also want to please point out that the board members and the library directors really need to sign this paperwork in blue ink. If not, we're going to have to send it back to you, and we really don't want to do that. So please make sure it's in blue ink, and everything will be going very well. It's also a good idea to let your trustees know about the professional organizations out there that can help provide them information and additional continuing education. The first is the American Library Association, and I've provided their URL. Like many organizations, ALA is providing a lot of virtual training right now. So feel free to share that information with your board. United for Libraries is the division of the American Library Association that is dedicated to friends groups and library trustees. All of their training is geared toward what issues friends groups and trustees will face. A lot of their material is available to watch on demand. And they do provide monthly training for trustees. It is a very good resource for your trustees. I can't encourage you to let them know about that enough. And lastly, we do have the West Virginia Library Association. We do have a trustee division. If they're interested in serving, please give them my contact information, and I can give them information about signing up and getting them into contact with that division. And last, here is my contact information. Feel free to give it to your board. We will be trying to start back up with trustee training over 2021. It will look a little bit different. It'll be virtual, but it is what it is, and we want everyone to be safe and healthy. So I'm going to stop my presentation because I really cannot see anything in the chat right now. So hopefully, if you have questions, feel free to start putting that in the chat. And or if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself, and we can start a discussion that way. So let me see what's in the chat. Thank you, Karen, for letting everyone know that the blue ink is a state requirement.
We feel so guilty about that. We have to, let
Yes.
people know.
I have a question since there's not any trustees with us today. What are your thoughts of getting your trustees more involved in training and coming to events such as this? Do you have any recommendations for us?
There are a few directors on here, as you know, in addition to staff, and I'm glad to see so many staff on here. But for the directors, do you have problems? What are the barriers to training? I guess I want to say to trustee training that you see, because that would help us a lot. Oh, good. We have a trustee. Wonderful. Thank you for being
Thank
here,
you,
Beth.
trustee. Thank you, Beth. Well, in your opinion, what can we do to help get more trustees involved? And if you want to speak. Oh, you're muted.
I'm
There you go.
unmuted now. Thank you. I'm filling in a term. I was asked to replace somebody, resignation from the board. And it means a lot to me to be on the Charles Gibson board because it was the library I've gone to since I was 10 years old. It was just down the block from where I grew up. So I spent hours in that library. So I feel a really personal connection to that library and want the best for it. But I'll be honest, I was kind of hoping there wouldn't be any big financial issues to deal with. And at the very first meeting, bam, here were budgets and this and that. And I thought, okay, wow, for a former English teacher, this is really intimidating. So I think for me, the most intimidating aspect is understanding all the financial parts of running even a small library like Charles Gibson. So for me, at least, training on the financial aspects would be helpful. And I've slowed down our meetings because I don't know all the acronyms yet. You know, it's Sierra and this and that, and I feel like a really slow seventh grader. I'm raising my hand saying, is Sierra a person or a thing? Could you back up and explain those letters you just said? So I feel like the dumb kid in class because I don't know that yet. I know I'll catch on. And everyone on the board says, oh no, we don't mind you asking questions. And maybe they really don't. But I think it would be nice if there was a cheat sheet, maybe just a paper that has all of the acronyms that a trustee might need to know. That would be helpful. And again, for me at least, some training on the financial aspects of what a trustee does.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you for that. I like that. We have a new employee who is going to be taking notes at our commission meeting, which is like our board. And she was going through the recording of the last one, and she said, what do all these letters mean? And we are a very acronym heavy profession or activity. We have lots of them, and we have the terrible habit of assuming everyone knows what they mean. So,
well, and our library,
I like the idea of the cheat sheet.
Our library director is having a baby today. So I came in.
Congratulations to Kathy.
Yeah, they were going to induce her today. Her blood pressure was becoming an issue. So maybe a baby today, maybe a baby tomorrow. So I came in at a time, again, it's when your library director's on maternity leave, that's another kink in the hose.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all trying to figure out how that looks, especially in the age of COVID. You know, how to keep Kathy safe. That was a big priority. Nobody wanted her at risk. But I would love a list of jargon. That would be great. I won't feel so stupid in meetings. At least I can look at that list.
So that's very good. What about staff that's on here? Are you comfortable with all the jargon, or would it help to have some, what are these people talking about?
I know when I started, I was completely lost. And then I started on July 1st and was thrown into Bibliostat.
Uh-huh. And what's Bibliostat?
It was trial by fire, learn or sink, and I refused to sink. So
Great. Because we throw Bibliostat around, which isn't an acronym, but it's what we call the annual report. And that's not particularly intuitive to say Bibliostat. What's that mean? So great. Somebody else. You must have done a great job, Heather.
Well, Nancy said maybe pre-record presentation for trustees to show them at board meetings. Nancy, we are considering that for the upcoming year. Because of COVID and we cannot travel, we are trying to see what other things that we can do to provide board members with little mini trainings, like 10 to 15-minute videos that they can show. That way, everyone can stay up to speed on everything. Oh, yes. And Judy Rule at Cabell is a wealth of knowledge.
I know, Lynn, you were thrust into the library world and then into library service center world. And that was a tough one. And you're doing a great job now. And really, if you have questions, if things just don't make sense, call Heather, call Susan, call me. In my case, I'll always give you much more information than you ever wanted, but because I wanted to give you the background and everything like that. But you can say that's enough for whatever. I won't be insulted because I know I do this.
And anytime Susan and I don't know an answer, we do consult with Karen. So we even use Karen as a great resource.
And I give them lots more information than they ever wanted because it,
and it's okay.
I don't know if you can hear me, but as far as training, this is Lynn. I don't know if I'm unmuted or not. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, Lynn, we can hear you.
I was thrust into library service center finance world, and it did take me a little time, but the best resources that I found are, you guys are great. Anytime I call Karen or even you, Heather, it's Tandra, I call with crazy questions, and you all are really good about answering. But Judy was good. Bibliostats, every time I have a question, and that was a challenge for me, knowing what goes into what category, as far as the finance. It's still trial by error. I still find things, every year I'll call Karen and say, hey, can I put this in there? And she's like, well, and she explains it very well. But I don't think that the trustees actually understand all of that. And as far as the trustee with the finance, we have that issue as well. They don't really understand finance, or, some of them, you get a librarian that's never, even a school librarian that's never done anything with finance. They don't even know how to read a financial statement. And sometimes it's maybe doing a little bit of training on just the overview of what's expected of them, and maybe making it a little more accessible, because we're in the Eastern Panhandle, and I know, it's hard enough to get our board members here every month. If they have to go to Charleston for training, and they're not going to go, so I don't know if it should be, recorded and Zoomed, or if maybe we could, right now, obviously we can't, but stage some trainings throughout the state that they don't have to go and, spend a whole day and spend the night. It's a 6-hour drive for our trustees, and I can't see them doing that. Maybe once a year during the meeting, but not even all of them do that. I think we've had maybe 2 of our trustees go to the annual meetings and do that kind of stuff.
Zoom, you think Zoom works? Beth, you're our token trustee, and you're obviously okay with Zoom. What do you think overall, and the impressions from the staff that works with Trustee and the other directors? Would Zoom meetings work, or should we do like tutorials and put them on the YouTube channel.
I would say you have to consider the age of your trustees and how comfortable they are with technology. I don't love Zoom. I call them Brady Bunch meetings because I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch because everybody's got the little square. So I don't know if you've got an older trustee, if YouTube is your answer, it certainly could be an option. And I don't know if you could consider maybe trainings regionally so people didn't have to go to Charleston. But right now, I don't think you're going to have a lot of people comfortable traveling and going into a facility they're not familiar with. So I think Zoom and YouTube are and pre-recorded training someone could access they're your best options. But maybe when things get a little bit more back to normal, maybe regional meetings. So people aren't going all the way to Charleston, and you get to meet other people who are trustees. And it's just like teacher meetings in Charleston or regional meetings. You get a lot of information when you talk to other people who are in the same position you're in.
Exactly. And Nancy, thank you for the reminder that internet can be an issue for Zoom. Internet can be an issue for YouTube. We hope things will be getting better in that area, but it's not going to be tomorrow. And so maybe even the old fashioned put it on a CD and send it to you so it can be played at a meeting might be still not a bad option. And I know a lot of people, are using Zoom on their phones, and that's different than Zoom on an iPad or Zoom on a laptop.
Exactly.
And I think that sometimes that limits the discussion too of going back and forth. And I agree with you, Beth, that the whole Brady Bunch thing is, and there are probably people on this call that don't have any frame of reference for Brady Bunch.
They can look it up.
Yes, there you go.
They may be Googling it right now. Who knows?
Since we have the directors on and Beth, is there anything else that should be added to our checklist for new directors? Anything that you thought of? Anything in the manual that needs to be updated? That would be great to know. This coming year is our year to look at the Trustee Essential Handbook for updates. So if there's a section that is needed, by all means, please let me know. Beth, I do have financials down, so we will try to get a chapter on financials because it does not have one right now.
And I think that is something we haven't looked at, and it's so important to them. And a lot of trustees have asked, okay, where does our money come from? And especially with like state money, how do you determine how much state money each library gets? And when you've been around as long as I have, I just forget that other people don't, that's not their lives. And it needs to be explained, or sort of along with the teacher. Where's the money come from, and what do we have to qualify for, and what do those qualifications mean as far as the state money goes, and how do we get more?
I'm not seeing anything else in chat, and that covered all of my questions. Karen, did you have any more?
No, I can't think of anything right now. I appreciate you all coming to, because this is a really, um, trustees have a big responsibility. And best for the financials, they're the ones that are supposed to be keeping an eye on the financials. And we go over that. We've done some, we were launching some regional trainings, and then things happened both internally, and then we could blame it on the pandemic, but it wasn't the pandemic. But we even had trouble getting trustees to regional training. And we tried to have them in nice places, and we fed them and had them in the middle of the day. We thought it's that important. And we learned a lot from those trainings of the questions they had, especially new trustees. And maybe we should have a trustee orientation type thing too, that like if you're new, this is something you could attend either virtually or some at a conference, if we go back to physical conferences, or in regional meetings, or even service center wide. And there's a whole nother ball game that is unique to West Virginia library landscape, is the service center concept and how that works. And it's sort of like when I go to state librarian meetings, they always say, if you've seen a state library, you've seen one state library. Pretty much if you've seen one service center, you've seen one service center, because they all have sort of unique characteristics. Thanks, Nancy, for the service center. And we have had some luck with service center trustee trainings at that level. And they're always good meetings.
Hey, Karen and Heather. Can you hear
Yes,
me? Okay.
I can.
Okay. I'm not a director and I'm not a trustee, but I kind of deal with some of the issues. I thought that the training at Stonewall Jackson a couple years ago, during the annual conference, I thought it had a lot of good sessions for trustees. There was a lot on personnel, and there was, about the sunshine law, and I think there was something in there on minutes and meetings, and there was just a lot of good information there. One need that I think that there's a lot of questions on are like personnel type issues, wage and hour, and those, there's just so much going on in that area right now. I attended, I cannot remember. It was one of those big companies that do seminars.
Mhm.
They charge a lot of money. But if one of them, perhaps if there was money somewhere that could, and they were put on by like lawyers and, but anyway, they covered a wide area of, your personnel policy, your, wage and hour and discrimination. And I think there's always a need for those types of sessions.
Right. Thanks. Because some of those things you don't realize you don't really have a good grasp on until the situation is facing you. And you say, oh dear. And a lot of times when you call us, the first question out of our mouths will be, what's your policy say? So I think the whole focus on policies and reviewing policies. We have you submit your policies to us. And I've often thought, oh, I'll trot this one right out there since we still have a little bit of time, is that what if you wanted us to say what's good and what's bad about this policy, because we don't do that as you submit your policies. The requirement is that you submit them. But if you want to say, how does this compare? What would you change in this policy? Or we're even getting ready to look at our personnel policy. What should we have in it? Staff may beat me up by saying, you want us to do something else, but that's my job.
That's okay. This is something we've already talked about. So Susan and I can bemoan in the reading room and we'll order pizza.
And maybe we would invite some people from the field to say, okay, because we will send out other folks' policies to that. But that would be the, and that has helped too, especially different parts of policies. And back to Judy Rule, I often refer them to Cabell's policies because they have pretty thorough policies on everything.
Yes. All right, if there is nothing else, thank you all for coming to this first session. Our next session is at 11 o'clock. As a reminder, it is going to be recorded also. I am going to stop the recording for this session and at 11, start the recording for that one. So you may see another pop-up asking for permission to be part of that recording. If you have any questions or think of anything about this session later on, please feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. I would be very happy to hear from any of you. Thank you.
Sign off, Heather.
I'm sorry?
We have a question from Barbara Fields in the chat that I want to
Oh,
really
I missed that. I'm sorry, Barbara.
because this is one of my favorite things. Could we make it mandatory? That
I would love to make it mandatory.
I would love to make it mandatory. When we were writing the administrative rule, I wanted to make trustee training mandatory. And the director then said, you can't do that, Karen. They're volunteers. I said, let me just try. Let's put it in the rule and see if anybody complains. And he wouldn't let me do it. But I think that could be handled on the local level, that maybe board bylaws could say, within the term of each trustee, they have to attend some kind of training, and do it that way. So be thinking about that as you're redoing your policies and bylaws, how you might be able to support some trustee training that way. And training could be interpreted broadly. So, and we could say, and even then we could say, we being the library commission, this particular session or whatever is acceptable if your library board requires training. We could track it for you that way. And another staff member has just thrown a dart at me, but that's okay. Okay, thanks again.
All right, thank you, everyone.